Hey, Bobby Manning here, no Dalzell alongside. Celtics lose to the Knicks in Game 4, but the bigger fear, the suspected Achilles tear for Jayson Tatum after a right leg injury that's still not confirmed as we record this, but wide fear that that's what that was in that moment, and a potentially catastrophic injury for the series, but really the next year potentially here in that case with the Celtics. Hard to focus on this game, hard to focus on this series right now with something like that looming over it, but the mix of the Celtics effectively losing this series tonight here at MSG, along with losing their franchise player for perhaps the foreseeable future here, making this one of the most dark moments unbelievably in Celtics history here.
Yeah, this is a tough one. We're standing here in Madison Square Garden. I think a lot of us expected the Celtics to come back and tie the series 2-2. And suddenly the final score really doesn't feel all that consequential. I mean, obviously you want them to win here. I think it started to feel like this wasn't going to be their year from a championship standpoint. And I don't want to bury them alive here. They're not out. They're not eliminated yet. But just the takeaway here is that everybody's kind of fearing the worst. And that Celtics locker room post-game was very unique environment where you could just feel the grief in a way in the room. Just Porzingis kind of just sitting there looking out. Drew Holiday sat there for a while. Sam Hauser, you could just see on their faces all of them processing what they had just seen, what they had just experienced, and the fact that one of their brothers, one of their teammates, is in a very difficult position here. So that's what everybody's thinking about. I think the game, I honestly, it's hard to even recall all the things that went wrong, and a lot of them did in this one because this is kind of the overwhelming thing.
The injury happened with about 3 minutes left. Celtics trailing by 9 at that moment, I believe. Pass to Brown that bounced away. Tatum pursuing the loose ball and stepped hard on his right foot. Again, no ankle turn there or anything like that, and that's where you start to fear the worst in that moment. The Knicks bench did, coming out and approaching him as he left the floor, couldn't put any weight on that leg, and then of course left the floor on a wheelchair. Was in the trainer's room as we were in the locker room. We didn't see him, didn't watch him leave the arena, anything like that. Still, as we record this, no reports here, but you mentioned that the look on everybody's faces in the room, the massive concern we heard from Al Horford. I know you talked to Kristaps Porzingis as well in there. Sam Hauser went and sat in the hallway and just stared ahead for a while there. And then, of course, Karl-Anthony Towns said, I've been through that calf injury too, and that's something that's concerning to me in that moment. Said he prayed for Tatum in that situation when he walked out on the floor. It was a difficult scene in there.
Yeah, and I think the reality is that everybody understands there's short-term consequences of somebody that you just saw put up really an all-time performance for much of this game. Suddenly to see that taken away, and to him, I've never seen him be carried off the floor. I don't know if you have.
Nope.
But he gets the ankle sprains, the wrist. He was banged up in this game. He landed on the wrist earlier in this one, but right away you could tell not just the pain that he was in, but really the trainers around him. Nick saying one of his closest friends,
Burst
and also
down on the floor.
and just I was looking at Nick's face more than anything, where you were just like, oh God, this is serious. And I didn't even see the initial play the first time around. I assumed it was just a bad ankle sprain, and then you're looking at everything developing around it, and you're like, this is worse. This is worse than that. And so we don't have a lot of information, but we did get the most solemn Jaylen Brown that I've ever seen. People just struggling with basic questions. I don't think anybody really had words to describe what was going through their moment.
They tried to shift it back toward the series because, again, still alive, still want to rein in the defense at this moment and do the little things as Joe talked about to get this right now. But it's going to be extremely difficult mentally to get back on track for that game in Boston on Wednesday.
Extremely. And I wouldn't be surprised if they pull out a win, because ultimately this is a resilient group of guys that have championship experience and have a lot of love and care for one another. I'm sure we'll see a lot of reports in the coming weeks here of kind of what went wrong. I don't have any reason to think this locker room has not been together kind of through all of this. I think this is a group that just kind of came up short in the series and had a couple of really challenging games from a focus, execution standpoint. But I think you're going to see a rally in them in Game 5. I don't think, I'm kind of talking about this already long term, like the season's over, but they do have another game to play, and I think there's going to be guys that are going to want to play for Tatum, for one another, and for a chance to extend the series.
Yeah, and that'll happen on Wednesday. Of course, they'll do it without Jayson Tatum. So many injuries stacking up through the course of the series, too. And you mentioned that the championship hopes just started to feel more ill-fated as the series progressed. But even yesterday, as we record this, still feeling good about their chances to get back in the series after a 20, 30-point lead in that Game 3. I felt great about this series going into it. The way it went sideways, even before the Tatum injury there, still startling. And I know it's difficult to talk about the game at this point, but the defense just not there. Tatum tried to will them through it with made shots. Jalen struggled, and the Knicks just overwhelmed them in the fourth quarter there, and that was basically the night.
That was the night, and I think, there's the big picture of it. I'm thinking about the fact that they were able to win a championship regardless of what happens next. A lot of players don't get to do that. And then I'm thinking about Jayson Tatum just a few months ago telling us he wants to surpass Larry Bird and all the aspirations that he has. And this obviously doesn't end any of those dreams, even the worst fears. He's going to come back from this and he's going to be a great player, but the worst thing that you could possibly imagine as a guy his age, as far as an on-court injury, like this is up there, right? And so, again, fingers crossed. Maybe there's a prayer's chance that this is not what we all think it is. Maybe by the time you're watching this video, it's already been confirmed. But I think the reality is that this game is going to be an asterisk to a much bigger moment for this franchise. And the moments that preceded, I thought we were going to be breaking down the defensive lapses, of which there were many, the ill-advised turnovers, the inability to secure defensive rebounds, and all of that now just feels like the precursor to a really tragic moment for this franchise.
Yeah, and the series is a difficult loss. Again, probably lost to that point Tatum goes down, and now that extends the massive concerns about this core's future, which we started having as we looked ahead to this future beyond this summer even, and this franchise potentially changed overnight here. We'll wait for confirmation of that injury, and of course there is a game to play on Wednesday, so we'll look ahead to that a little bit before we think about off season coming up here. But that is on everybody's mind now. What's going to happen here if that was an Achilles tear for Jayson Tatum and he is going to miss as much as all of next season with that? We'll have more coverage of that as it develops here. We don't have a ton of information at the moment, but wanted to give you some reaction here from Madison Square Garden where the Celtics fell 3-1 in this series, and we'll try to avoid elimination on Wednesday back in Boston. For Noah Dalzell, I'm Bobby Manning. We'll talk to you then.